Henry Ford, 1863 to 1947. 1903 to 1905. First Ford automobile, the two-cylinder 8-horsepower Model A, designed by Henry Ford and manufactured by his newly incorporated Ford Motor Company, appears in 1903, selling for $850. Higher-priced models appear over the next few years. 1908. Designed for rural America, Model T Ford is introduced, and until 1927 is the only model built by the company. Makes Ford the country's premier auto manufacturer, fulfilling his plant to build motor car for the great multitude. 1910 to 1916. With his automotive associates, establishes a manufacturing process of sequential production and division of labor that evolves into the continuously moving assembly line. Considered the greatest industrial advance since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, which leads to mass production of Model T. In 1914, Ford announces a basic wage of $5 for an 8-hour day. Offer extends, in fact, to only a portion of the Ford workforce. Nonetheless, his advocating the $5 day brings Ford much praise and fame as an enlightened businessman, if not as an enlightened thinker. I don't like to read books, he explains. They muss up my mind. History, he declares, is more or less bunk. 1916 to 1919. Name put into nomination for presidency at Republican National Convention and gains 32 first ballot votes. Moves successfully to wield absolute power over all Ford enterprises. By 1916, company producing 2,000 cars a day, with a production total to date of 1 million Model Ts. At outbreak of World War I, becomes active as pacifist opponent of war and attacks war profiteering, announces to meeting of Ford officials, I know who caused the war, the German Jewish bankers. I have the evidence here, facts. The German Jewish bankers caused the war. With American entry into the war, pledges to operate without 1 cent of profit in fulfilling government contracts, but neglects to do so at urging of President Wilson, runs for Senate as a Democrat, though formally identified as a Republican, and is defeated in close election, attributes his losing to Wall Street interest and the Jews. In May, Dearborn Independent, local weekly bought by Ford in 1918, prints the first of 91 detailed articles devoted to exposing the international Jew, the world's problem. In ensuing issues, serializes the text of the fraudulent Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which, claiming the document and its revelation of a Jewish plan of world domination to be authentic, circulation rises to close to 300,000 by second year of publication. Subscriptions to paper are forced upon Ford dealers as a company product, and the strongly anti-Semitic articles are collected in a 4-volume edition, The International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. 1920s, 5 million Ford cars produced. In 1921, more than half of cars sold in America are Model Ts. Excuse me. Develops huge River Rouge plant in industrial city of Dearborn, acquires forests, iron mines, and coal mines to supply auto company with raw materials, diversifies Ford line of cars. His 1922 autobiography, My Life and Work, is a non-fiction bestseller, and the Ford name and legend are known throughout the world. Polls show him running ahead of President Harding in popularity, and is spoken of as potential Republican presidential candidate. In the fall of 1922, considers presidential run. Adolf Hitler, in 1923 interview, says, "We look to Heinrich Ford as the leader of the growing fascist movement in America." In mid-20s, a suit for defamation against him by a Chicago Jewish lawyer is settled out of court, and in 1927, he retracts his attacks on Jews, agrees to discontinue anti-Semitic publications, and shuts down Dearborn Independent, a deficit enterprise that had cost him close to $5 million. When Lindbergh flies the Spirit of St. Louis to Detroit in August 1927, he meets Ford at Ford Airport and takes him in the famous plane for his first flight. Lindbergh interests Ford in aviation manufacturing. The two meet afterward numerous times, and in 1940 Detroit. In a 1940 Detroit interview, Ford explains, "When Charles comes out here, we only talk about the Jews." 1931 to 1937, competition from Chevrolet and Plymouth. An impact of depression produced large company losses despite invention of Ford V8 engine. Poor labor relations at River Rouge plant caused by speed-up job insecurity and labor espionage efforts by United Auto Workers to organize Ford, along with General Motors and Chrysler, meet with violence and intimidation by Ford. Detroit Vigilante Group beats up labor organizers at River Rouge. Ford Company's labor policies condemned by National Labor Relations Board and considered worst in auto history. 1938. In July, on his 75th birthday, accepts Service Cross of the German Eagle from Hitler's Nazi government at a birthday dinner in Detroit for 1,500 prominent citizens. Same medal awarded to Lindbergh in October ceremony in Germany, causing Interior Secretary X to tell a December meeting of the Cleveland Zionist Society, "Henry Ford and Charles A. Lindbergh are the only two free citizens in a free country who obsequiously have accepted tokens of contemptuous distinction at a time when the bestower of them counts the day lost when he can commit no new crimes against humanity, suffers first of two strikes." 1939 to 1940. With the outbreak of World War II, joins his friend Lindbergh in supporting Isolationism and America First Committee. Shortly after Ford is appointed to America First Executive Committee, Lessing J. Rosenwald, Jewish director of Sears, Roebuck and Company, resigns because of Ford's anti-Semitic reputation. For a while, meets regularly with anti-Semitic radio priest Father Coughlin, whose activities Roosevelt and Ickes believe Ford is financing. Lends financial support to the anti-Semitic demagogue Gerald L. K. Smith for his weekly radio broadcast and his living expenses. Some years later, Smith reprints Ford's International Jew in a new edition and maintains into the 60s that Ford never changed his opinion of Jews. 1941 to 1947, suffers second stroke. Company converts to defense production as war approaches. During war, produces B-24 bomber at huge Willow Run facility, where Lindbergh is hired as consulting advisor. Because of illness, Ford no longer able to run company and resigns in 1945. Dies in April 1947, and 100,000 mourners view the body. Vast fortune in company stock goes mainly to Ford Foundation, soon the world's wealthiest private foundation.